Hello, welcome to this edition of Grade Center training for the faculty of ACC. We've already gone through step 1 and step 2 of setting up our Grade Center, so this will be step 3. Today we're going to talk about how to have Blackboard calculate your final grades for your students. But in review, step 1, we talked about how to set up our categories. As a reminder, we went to Manage, chose Categories, and this is where we set up our categories that match with our grading schema listed in our syllabus. In this example, we're going to have categories called Daily Work, Participation, and Tests 18. In step 2, we then started to create our columns manually. We did that by selecting Create Column. We gave the column a name, and most importantly, we assigned this category to the proper we assigned this column to the proper category. So if this were a test we were setting up, we would assign it to the test category. So assuming now that you have set up your categories and you have listed all of your columns that you're going to use for this semester, you're now ready to set up your calculated column. There are several ways that we choose to calculate grades here at ACC, and let me review several of those for you which might apply to your situation. For the first one, you'll see that there is a total column already set up in the Blackboard Grade Center. For those of you who simply add all of your columns up for one grand point total at the end of the semester, this is already ready to go. Every time you put point values in each column, they will be added in this total column for your final grade. If you would like to delete some of the columns and not include them in total, you can edit the column information. So right now in this example, it's using all Grade Center columns. But let's say you want to specifically choose which ones are included. You can say Selected Columns and Categories. So in our example, we have those 3 categories that we would like to add up: Tests, Daily Work, and Participation. So I'm telling this to total all of the columns included under the Daily Work category, all of the columns included under the Participation category, and all of the columns included under the Test category. Once I submit this, the total column will be adding up exactly what I ask it to add. Another way we like to do calculated columns is by an average. So if you use a simple average where you take every column that you listed in your Grade Center and you just want one average, you can again go to Create Calculated Column, but this time let's choose the average column. You'll give it a name. For this example, let's say we just want to set up a test average. I only wanted to average just the tests. So I give it a name. And again, right now when I set it up by default, it's going to average all of my grade columns. If that's what you want it to do, leave it exactly like it is and click Submit. But if you want to specify which columns you want to average, you need to say Select them. In my example, I want to get a test average, so I'm going to say take all of the tests from the test category and average them for me. In addition, some of you may choose to drop the lowest grade. In my example, I told it to drop one of the lowest grades. But again, you can choose whatever number of grades you would like to lower. So once you've determined that you have the test category over here, that's what you want to average, and you got the number of tests you'd like to drop, click Submit. Every new category that you create, column that you create will be listed at the very end of the Grade Center. So here's the test average column that we just set up. Now let's get a little trickier. Some of you want to create a final average, but you have weighted categories. So let's talk about how to set up a weighted category. Again, we're going to select Create Calculated Column and select Weighted Column. And in this example, this is going to be my final average. So you want to select the columns that are going to be weighted and included in this final average. In my example, I'd like to include my test column in my final average, my daily work, my participation, and then I'd also like to include my final exam. Now I can provide the percentages or the weights that are listed in my syllabus. For example, let's say my final exam is 40% of my grade. My daily work, 20. My participation, 10. And let's say my test column is worth 30% of my grade. Again, see that under every category, again, you have the option if you want to drop any of the grades from any of these categories. Once I set everything up, I click submit, and here at the end is my final average. So this is doing exactly what I asked it to do. It's taking my daily work by the percentage I specified, my exams by the percentage I specified, and my participation grade to provide me with a final average. So creating calculated columns is not difficult as long as you have done step 1 and step 2 previous to setting this up. Have your categories set up, have all of your columns in place, and then it's very easy to create your own calculated column. As always, if you need any personal assistance, please reach out to the Distance Education Department, and we will be glad to sit down with you and help you create your calculated column.